All right, guys, thank you for joining me on today's weekly Outlook webinar for this week of June 3rd, 2018. I want to get right into things, guys. But before that, I do just want to introduce myself to those of you guys that do not know who I am. My name is David Schinkel. I am the CEO and founder of Positive Traders. If this is your first weekly Outlook, you can keep your notifications turned on in Telegram for Positive Traders. I do this weekly Outlook just about every single Sunday for you guys for free, give you guys my bias and my outlook. And with that being said, that is just that, my bias and my outlook. So little disclaimer is that, this information, guys, is not, you shouldn't be using this as investment advice or as financial advice. This is just for educational purposes only. So, please, if you're doing any of your own trading, let this just be a handicap. Do all of your own analysis, all of your own setups before getting into any sort of trades, but let this help you to be a guide. And, that's what I hoped for at the very least. So let's get into things before we jump into the charts and look at some setups. I just want to go over two main things on the economic calendar this week. So there's a lot of different high impact news this week. And the two main things I just want to look at is, first thing is actually just a group of news events. And it's just the fact that there's a lot of Australian dollar news this week. So we actually have some retail sales in just a few hours here for the Australian dollar. Then we have a rate statement, which is an interest rate decision for the Australian dollar tomorrow. And then Tuesday, we have some GDP, which is a quarter-over-quarter report GDP, some gross domestic product for the Australian dollar. Wednesday, there's trade balance for the Australian dollar. Thursday, nothing for the Australian dollar, and Friday, nothing for the Australian dollar. So just a couple things to keep in mind. And then also, big thing I just want to mention is, because I'm sure most of us in here right now trade at least one pair that has the euro in it, there is going to be some high impact news event for the euro on Tuesday morning. It's going to be European Central Bank President Draghi speaking. So that's going to be Mario Draghi. He's the president of the ECB, which is the European Central Bank. So expect that to probably shake up the markets around that time. So that's the other thing I want to point out. So two big things. Among that, there's some other high impact news, but I'm not going to go over every single thing on this webinar. One other last thing I want to point out, which is going to tie into our bias, or my bias for this week, or is just going to help be a supporting factor to it, is Friday's NFP. So this is Friday. We had the much anticipated NFP, first Friday of the month. And we saw it come out in all green for the US dollar. And I'm actually just going to go over one type of thing, which is just going to be an example of why it's good to follow the news, or not necessarily like trade the news, but just follow it so you can like understand it. But we did see everything very, very good, right? We saw unemployment's at multi-year lows, average hourly earnings higher than expected, and the NFP actually much higher than expected. So very good for the dollar, and we're going to be looking at the market in relationship to that. So other than that, this week, those two things, the Australian dollar and the European Central Bank, but that is it to discuss. Let's jump into the juicy stuff, guys. Let's jump into the technical analysis, and let me give you guys my bias. So overall, my bias is still towards a stronger dollar. However, I wouldn't be surprised this week if we started to see somewhat of a correction or price start to range in this area. So really, for me, I'm going to be on the sidelines until Sunday's candle closes. So the current daily candle that's open on pretty much every pair right now, I'd like to wait and see where that Sunday candle closes to really get a better idea of where the markets might be headed this week. So that being said, there's going to be like one pair today that we go over that I'm going to actually give you like a specific setup on, but pretty much on the sidelines with most of the dollar pairs right now. So dollar index pretty much on the sidelines. I think there can be an argument made to the upside or the downside. But overall bullish, right? Bullish on the dollar. I like to be looking at for opportunities to buy the dollar and scalp. And I know I didn't post a lot inside of Telegram for those of you guys that are part of the free group last week. I think I posted, let me take a look at Telegram very quickly. I posted one trade setup on USD CAD, which we'll look at. And then, of course, the weekly outlook. So there's a couple setups on the weekly outlook that followed through pretty nicely. And then one actual setup on USD CAD, which we're going to look at in just a moment here. But not a whole lot to work with last week. Did a little bit of scalping, made about 2% if you guys are a client connected to the trade copier. And then we are currently in this gold trade. So we just talked about the dollar. So looking at gold. So this is currently an open running trade that we are in, as well as everybody connected to our trade copier. This is a signal we gave out. So this is something I also mentioned last week. So if you were on Sunday's webinar last week, which is for free, of course, I did drop some nuggets hinting at this setup. So this is a risk-free trade for us right now. We have our stop loss at break even, but pretty simple, basic price action, right? We're making a series of lower lows and lower highs. We rejected really nicely off of this. We can even just kind of extend this zone just a little bit. We rejected nicely off of this previous demand area, support area for gold. And of course, we have the very important area, the 1300 area, which we're back below. So our next target is going to be 1250. So we're below 1300. So I'm going to expect it to move to the next $50 move. So 1250 is my next target. And just to kind of recap, guys, I've been pretty accurate with gold. If you guys remember back when gold was down in this area, I had mentioned it bouncing off this area and moving up towards 1350. Once it was at 1350, we had talked about it ultimately moving back down to 1300, which we saw happen. And then we've broken through 1300. So I'm expecting gold to move lower. That's also supported on a bias of a stronger dollar as well. Euro USD, I think there's argument for upside and downside on USD. Overall bias to the downside, right? Because I'm biased towards the upside on the dollar. But I'd really like to see, I'm going to be on the sidelines until entering a trade on this, definitely until at least the daily candle closes. USD Swiss franc, not interested in trading. It's been consolidating for quite a while. I mean, I'm definitely watching it. I definitely have, am noting this channel that we're in. So I have that. This is definitely on my watch list. I mean, we're bouncing off of parity. So for those of you guys don't know what parity is, that's one, right? That's when, $1 US is worth 1 Swiss franc. So we bounced off of that area. And we haven't really seen it have the strong negative correlation to Euro USD like we generally see. And I would speculate that a lot of that has to do with it being around parity. So I'm not interested in trading this pair. Pound dollar, for those of you guys that have been following positive traders for a while, you'll know that this trend line is not any new trend line whatsoever. So previously, just to kind of recap, give you guys an idea of where price has been going, where a bias has been. This was given out, I guess, on May 22nd. So it was I know it was at the beginning of one of the previous weeks. So May 22nd, let's see. Yeah, it was the beginning of not last week, but the week before last. I said right here, expecting support to break and further downside along with this and pound yen. And this, if you notice, with this and pound yen, this was when pound yen was at 149 before it dropped those 400 pips. Okay. So just another thing to show you guys like the accuracy of these trades. So pound dollar, and this is that same trend line, right? That same trend line has been all the way for a while here now. We bounced off of this trend line. where we've just kind of been consolidating sideways. So if we go back to the actual charts, we can see there hasn't been much movement. Really, last week was kind of really slow in the markets too. We are correcting a little bit on this pair. And again, I think I'm really on the sidelines before entering a trade right now, guys. I think there's argument for upside and downside on this pair as well. Really just kind of like the whole markets in general. So all of these are really based off of what happens to the dollar. Pound yen, same thing. We see a really like positive correlation between the pound dollar and pound yen. So we're seeing both of these correct pretty heavily right now. I think we're going to see a little bit more upside on pound yen, but ultimately looking for sell opportunities. Okay. So I'm ultimately still biased to the downside on pound yen. Those of you guys that have been here. So we just looked at that pound dollar previous trade setup, and you saw it dated from the 22nd, right? On the 22nd. And this is if you look at the bottom of the screen right here, all the way at the bottom where it shows the date, 5/22. That was right at the top right here. So I said expecting more downside on this pair and pound yen. So this pair meaning pound dollar, and then the pair that we're currently on, pound yen. So that was when we saw our downside. Our target of 145.50 was reached. Last week, it dipped a little bit below that area. And then towards the end of last week, we saw a pullback. And I think that we could see a little bit more of a correction. But like I said, ultimately, I'm still expecting downside on this pair, guys. That's what I would like to see. Dollar yen. Very similar to pound yen, they've both broken major key levels of support. So pound yen, here's pound yen. That's that major support trend line, major support area that's been broken. And dollar yen, major support or major uptrend. Okay. Last week we did bounce off of a pretty significant demand level or previous support area. And I see there's definitely an argument for correction and upside, especially if we do see the dollar strength. If you guys have been, active in the markets the past couple of weeks and you trade dollar yen and you look at the dollar index, usually we see a pretty positive correlation between the two. When we see the dollar index fall, we usually see USD JAPY dollar yen fall as well, and then vice versa. But we really haven't seen that positive correlation recently, but maybe that could change. But ultimately, just on the sidelines, looking to see what happens with the dollar index, guys. It's a pretty slow start to the week. So this is a more interesting setup. So I want you guys to keep your eyes on AUD USD. Now, I could be wrong here. I see a lot of people on social media right now posting all sorts of buy setups. I see some people posting sell setups as well, but I see a lot more buy setups than I see sell setups. And one thing that you really have to train yourself, just as a little side note, if you're really going to get serious about and take trading seriously and be in this niche, is you're obviously going to, if you're going to be in this niche most of the time, you're going to have friends on social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, that are in the same niche as well. And you're going to be very susceptible to seeing a lot of people posting, things related to Forex. And you just have to be able to, kind of like block your emotions out. And I'm not saying necessarily like screenshots of profits and stuff. That's definitely a big thing. But more importantly, the whole like setups, right? You'll see a lot of people posting different setups, and majority of people aren't right. So you want to just kind of have your own analysis, have your own strategy, right? Have your own strategy. Don't be like going based off of other people's stuff. And I know that might sound kind of contradicting because a lot of you guys might be using this information in your own analysis, but it's okay to, observe others and, maybe like double check yourself if you want, but overall make sure you're doing your own analysis. Okay. AUD long-term sell. Awesome. Yeah. I'm glad Sheldon. So big shout out to Sheldon, guys. He helps out a lot in Telegram. He's in the chat room. Posts a lot of stuff. I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with him. So glad to see that we're both eye to eye. So main thing, I know I didn't really, I know on every setup until now, I've been pretty much on the sidelines, haven't really given out a whole lot to work with, but this is the pair that I'm really going to be watching this week, or at least to start off this week. It looks really nice. So I just want you guys to just look at just basic price action, right? And this is what I trade. So some of you guys that might be watching this for the first time, or you might be new to following me, you might one thing that you might notice that's different about me, I don't have my chart cluttered with indicators, right? I don't use like RSI, stochastics, moving averages, Bollinger Bands, all that stuff. Not to say that it's bad. There's profitable traders. I'm sure there's profitable strategies, but what I have found works the best for me is relying on just raw price action, support and resistance, supply and demand, which is essentially support and resistance, and trend lines, and just price action, guys. Just waiting, using higher time frames as well, right? It's definitely, I definitely do some scalping once in a while, but a majority of the time I'm working on higher time frames, like the daily and the 4 hour. And then I'll, scale down starting on the weekly and that type of thing. But I'm not really here to get into my strategy. I'm just here to just share with you guys, just if you want to get consistent, it's good to look at what the markets are doing. Using any type of indicator, it's lagging. It's always lagging, right? And that's something that you have to understand. RSI, stochastics, MACD, Bollinger Bands, it's all lagging. You're always seeing old data. So it's good in a sense. It lets you see like previous trends, and it helps you, you can use it in addition to to your analysis. So, I don't want to sound hypocritical, because you guys can see on my chart that I do actually have a moving average on here. So that is considered an indicator. So again, I'm not saying all indicators are bad, but I'm just saying don't be relying on a bunch of other indicators and just ignoring the charts, right? It's okay to use an indicator, but make sure that you're always, understanding and you're knowledgeable in price action. Okay. So that's the main thing I just want to go over, but just look at the price action on this pair. So we have this support, we made major support area broken. In the previous couple of weeks, actually, we've just kind of been consolidating. So this move has been called for a while. So for some of you guys this is another thing, I'm not here to like gloat, guys. I'm here really just to show you guys that, like, some of you guys like don't take this seriously, right? You might just be watching this, rolling your eyes, bored, not really paying attention. But there's some of you guys that are watching this, taking notes, and you guys actually message me, and you talk about the setups, and you talk about, how you message me and you tell me how much money you made off of these webinars. So this is just to show you guys, like, if you actually take this seriously and you follow along and you get a trading journal and you take this seriously, some serious money can be made. So just moving back along, right? So just using this trend line and understanding price action and just market movement and direction, after this uptrend happened and we saw this big downtrend break down and we saw this bounce again for the third time off of this trend line, we saw this major uptrend, we were able to easily see that this move here looked very similar to this move back here. And we had this major area of resistance up at the top. So there's a very good chance that we are going to bounce off this area. Now, and that you have to understand those words that I'm saying, that we had a very good chance, right? It's never guaranteed. But the words that I always use, that I used and always use when there's this type of setup, is if and when. Okay, so if you guys remember when we were back in this area, when we were getting around this resistance and we were climbing and we were in this rally, I said, if and when this uptrend is broken, we're going to have a big, strong downtrend. And our target is going to be, I said at that time, either the 76 level or wherever this trend line is, whichever gets hit first. And that was just simply based off of the whole uptrend that we were in and this whole previous move. And that's it, guys. That's seriously it. Like I know some of you guys might be like thinking it can't be that simple, but it really is that simple. And you're just waiting for that confirmation. So you just have to, and so it's very just similar setups like this. And you can see like I do have moving averages on here, but you didn't hear me one time in this whole analysis talk about the moving averages. I barely ever even look at or use it. It's just there as a little like handicap assistance on the side. And that's like the way you guys should be using my webinars right now, right? You should be using my webinars the same way I use moving averages. It's just there on the side. You look at it once in a while, you acknowledge it, but you're doing all of your own stuff before even looking at the moving averages. Okay. So lots of chat, lots of things in the chat. Mike said, I agree that trade was epic, caught it from the top. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's definitely opportunities to catch this trade. So I'm glad you did, Mike. So anyways, just kind of tying into and segueing into what my current analysis, but I know I give you guys a lot of information, but I want it just to make sense, is we are currently in this ascending wedge, but overall, right, we're in this major downtrend, and not just this major downtrend, but we've broken a major uptrend. So I've been bearish on AUD USD since last week, actually. Some of you guys that were on last week's webinar, I had actually drawn a trend line, and it looked something a lot like this. Something a lot like this. And you can actually see where the beginning of last week was right here. And I mentioned that when we saw this support trend line broken, we were going to see some downside. Okay. And we did see that downside actually for like quite a while of last week. Early on last week, we did see that downside. And then this reflects, sorry about this pop-up, guys. This big uptrend right here, this reflects, what was it? I think GDP last week that came out bad for the dollar. And then we can see that the rest of the week kind of consolidated. So in my opinion, the markets on this pair, and then you can actually see NFP right here, and then you can see the pullback. Okay. So ultimately, I'm bearish on AUD USD. Okay. Just like I'm bearish on gold. Okay. One thing, if you want to write on your trading journals, if you're not familiar with the correlations, is gold and AUD USD tend to have a positive correlation with each other. Okay. So I'm currently in an open and running sell on gold that I entered around the 1300 area. So it's in some really nice profits right now. AUD USD still giving us opportunities to sell. And so I will be looking for downside on this pair. NZD USD, because let me put this lightly, I'm not interested in trading NZD USD right now, but NZD and AUD USD have a very positive correlation. So how we just talked about AUD USD with the uptrend that, and it had created the downtrend. So when it had that second big uptrend, that gave us a clue that there was going to be another downtrend, or that there was a high probability. Okay. We called the downtrend, the down move right here. I actually called it, it's actually right here for you guys to see. And I said correction coming right here, boom. So I'd called it right at the top, right from the top. I said downside, right? So it took a little bit, right? And this is why patience is necessary and sticking to the plan is necessary. But we ultimately did see it fall. And look how simple, guys. This is just going back to price action, right? So if you guys are looking for, some hints or some tips, that you're watching this in looking for, hints and tips on how to become a better trader, it's just keeping it more simple and just being more patient, guys, waiting on the sidelines, like not taking tons of trades, not the market's open, when the market's open, obviously in my head, because I've been trading for so long, I know the markets are open and I'm just, okay, markets are open, but I'm not rushing to the computer, scrambling to look for a trade and getting into something. I'm just waiting for the setups. Okay. Waiting for the setups. So NZD USD. So currently right now, right, if we look at NZD USD, the reason the charts look a little bit different is because it's like this, right? Because we moved it We just scrunched it up a little bit, right? Sometimes you can get a better perspective. Do that sometimes, right? Take your charts and scrunch them up a little bit. You can sometimes get a little bit of a better perspective, actually. For some reason, when it's a little bit, I don't know, scrunched up, it gives you a better, you can see it better. I don't know, you can see the price action, and you can see like the consolidation and the ranges and the flags better, in my opinion. So that's another little just side tip. But anyways, if we're looking at NZD/USD, it generally has a positive correlation to AUD/USD. So if I'm expecting AUD/USD to go down, then I'm expecting NZD/USD to go down. However, the reason why I said I'm not interested in trading NZD/USD is because of this major support area, right? So just so in between 68 and 69, you can see this green zone right here is a major area of support the past couple of years, and then a couple of years before that, some resistance, okay? So pretty big area. But, you know, I'm looking for it, you know, to potentially break this support area. But I'd be watching AUD/USD more, because if that support area on this trend line has already been broken. So that's my interest, but I am interested in downside. Also, you know, just the little cherry on top is this AUD/USD. I mean, is the moving average, right? We have that 50-day EMA just really holding price down, pushing price down. And so I would expect to see AUD/USD move lower. So this is going to be like the trade of the week, in my opinion, okay? And gold too. Very bearish on gold, right? Bearish on gold down to 1250. So those are the two things, AUD, NZD/USD, we just went over. And finally, USD CAD. I do want to just finally go over USD CAD. This is a trade that is still, I'm still very much so interested in. So this is a trade we got stopped out on. I am very interested in getting into this trade. So let me just kind of like break it down very quickly for you guys. Okay, so here's the daily chart. Take a picture of it. More importantly, just watch last week's live webinar. I explain this wave that we're in. We're in the fifth and final wave, which is the third impulse wave, in my opinion. I explained also on last week's webinar why I think 134 is going to be the target. You can literally just go onto YouTube and watch it and just skip to USD CAD and just watch that part if you're interested. I'm not going to go over all of that on this webinar, but well, I'll just very quickly do this. Okay. This is all I'm going to do. Just measure this first wave, about 830 pips, 830 to 850 pips. Measure the second wave, 830 to 850 pips. Measure this third wave, 830 to 850 pips. Okay, so that's a little clue right there. So 134 is my target for this pair. We do have that trend line that we bounced off of last week, right? So we did discuss this trend line also. This is no new trend line, but there's a couple of trend lines, but I'm talking about this descending, the trend line going down that is holding this pair down as resistance. We saw it bounce off last week, which is okay. We got stopped out at break even. So we entered a buy around this area, moved into about running about 50 pips, and then got stopped out at break even, which is okay, right? Because it dipped down a little bit. A lot of people were like, "Oh, bad call." Ended up being a big fake out and moved up, right? So, still very much so valid for those of you guys that are in the daily live webinars on inside of Slack. I mentioned, and I think I might have actually mentioned this on the weekly webinar, that as long as USD CAD stays above this level, it's basically the 127.50 area, this zone, which is not just the support of this previous range, but also where we would expect to find like this trend line. So kind of like this golden zone right here. If it broke through this area, then my bias of this fifth and final wave, and this being an Elliott wave, is going to go out the door. But ultimately, if I scale out, I am expecting USD CAD to move. Let me put it back onto the daily chart. I am expecting USD CAD to break through this upper trend line, this resistance trend line that we have right now, break through this 50% retracement level that the third wave bounced off of right here, and then move up to our fifth wave. This is the most probable, in my opinion, my bias, the way I analyze the markets, the most probable scenario. So this is kind of like, so I just gave you guys a couple setups to work with for the week, which is gold. Gold is actually also long-term also. This is kind of comparable to USD CAD, so not just this week. Let me also be clear that, when we have these trades, when we're talking about these long-term trades, I'm giving you guys these longer-term biases, doesn't just mean you can enter just one long-term trade, right? There's opportunities to scalp inside this, and that's what I did this past week, right? I had a couple trades that got stopped out at break even, which is okay because there's no risk involved, but within those longer-term trades that got stopped out at break even and were risk-free, I was able to scalp a little bit in there and make a couple percentage. So, yeah, so I mean, look for that upside potential on USD CAD, okay? And then also a big thing very reflective of that is, if you guys do not know, you need to write this down, is that USD CAD and oil have a very strong negative correlation to each other, right? So we're seeing oil go down. Very simple, very simple. Oil goes down right now. USD CAD is going up right now, or we're seeing it go up, right? This is a very strong correlation that we see. So this is my buy on USD CAD is very much so supported on this correction and downtrend that we're starting to see on oil. So that's it, guys. So gold, AUD, USD, USD CAD. Those are the ones to watch this week. Lots of value seriously dropped, guys. I called that NZD USD. Sorry to draw you back. Do you think AUD USD will go back to retest the trend line before dropping? It very well may, Mike. You called the AUD USD NZD same day, if I remember. Yep, I called that both on the same day. So I believe that's it, guys. But I'm very excited for this week. The past couple weeks have been very, very good. Been making a lot of pips. A lot of money has been being made. And it's just very notorious, right? Every single time, every single year that Positive Traders has had our summer months, we always have some super killer months. So I'm hoping to get some 10, 15, 20% months like we have the past couple of years in the summer. So that's all I've got for you guys. I hope you guys have a great weekend. If this helps you guys, share inside the chat, guys. You can share to the Facebook page, I believe. Send me a message, do whatever. Tag us, share on your Facebook wall and tag us in it. We're gonna be doing some more. We recently did some giveaways and stuff. We'll do some more giveaways as we get a little bit more into the year. But that's really all I've got for you guys today. So write those setups down. Lots of good info, lots of good value. So hope you guys make some money this week. Remember, keep those risks low, okay? If you guys are not using the position size calculator on every single trade, you guys really need to. I'm not going to go over it, but I will just quickly put the link up for you guys. Position size calculator. You need to be using this position size calculator every single trade you get into. So take a picture of this with your phone if you need to. Google it, but you put in your account size, the percentage that you want to risk. I risk 2%, recommend 2%, the stop loss, the pair you trade, and then it will tell you what lot size to use. So that's it, guys. Have a great week. Appreciate you guys' time, and I will see you guys on next week's webinar, and take care, guys.